Welcome to YBC Today. I'm your host, Zachary Kaplan. So for a quick wrap-up of the week, Attorney General Jeff Sessions fired Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, 2 days before his retirement, which would lead to him collecting his pension. After President Trump floated the idea of giving the death penalty to drug dealers and illicit opioid dealers, this might actually become a reality. President Trump fired Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who found out from Chief of Staff John Kelly while on the toilet. President Trump plans to replace him with CIA Director Mike Pompeo. And President Trump is facing a lot of trouble in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's collusion probe, with President Trump left with little to no attorneys left to defend him in this investigation, and top advisor Rick Gates telling all he knows to Robert Mueller to escape conspiracy charges. In related news, Russia is in trouble diplomatically after it was revealed that they used a nerve agent on a former Russian spy living in the United Kingdom. And with many countries like the United States, Canada, Ukraine, and other European Union countries expelling diplomats from Russia, with President Trump ordering the expulsion of 60 diplomats recently. In other news, adult film star Stormy Daniels sued President Trump's attorney Michael Cohen for defamation of character in the ongoing scandal in which Stormy Daniels signed a $130,000 vow of silence and is now going public with these claims. So now for our regular story, which is about gerrymandering, which is an actual structural problem in our democracy, which has made America what it is. In Philadelphia, which is near the Democratic 7th District, because of gerrymandering, the constituents in the 7th District were put in the heavily Republican 16th District, which means that the combined 7th and 16th District went Republican even though a majority of voters were Democrat. Let me just explain to you what gerrymandering is. Basically what it is based on a map that is redistricted every 10 years. Basically, Republicans and Democrats can draw lines and compact Democratic voters and Republican voters to give themselves unfair advantages. However, gerrymandering isn't one of those scandalous issues that is opinion-based. Both parties are mutually involved in gerrymandering and both equally guilty of it. As Iowa's 1st District Representative Rod Blum said, "We shouldn't have to rig the system in our favor," but he also said that he can't afford to ignore any of his constituents. He said gerrymandering allows for the politician to be extreme right or extreme left and still be reelected because few of the gerrymandered districts are evenly balanced. He also said that if other gerrymandered districts were like the 1st District, then it would be more fair because the 1st is very balanced, so he can listen to his constituents and say upon voting for a bill, what does a Republican, Democrat, or Independent alike think of this bill? Gerrymandering is also the reason why competitive seats, one that either party has an even shot at winning, has plunged over the past 20 years from 164 to only 72. A prime example of this is in 2001, when to protect the seat of Illinois Democrat Bobby Rush, the map cut out a main block home to a small challenger named Barack Obama, so he couldn't run anymore. I'm going to let that sink in. So they gerrymandered the future president of the United States. This just shows how cruel the practice of gerrymandering is. But gerrymandering isn't as pertinent talking about power or constituencies. What's really interesting is something called racial gerrymandering. In 1986, one of the main attempts by the judiciary and congressional officials to neutralize gerrymandering, the Supreme Court ruled to expand the meaning and impact that the Voting Rights Act of 1965 had. In that expansion, the courts prohibited a practice that was quite common in that time among states to spread out minorities across voting districts, which meant that their vote was too weak to elect their preferred candidate. According to the Washington Post, the court required majority-minority districts, which let minorities elect their candidates of choice. However, the Post notes that in the 31 years since that ruling, the assertion that the majority-minority method would empower minorities to give them the power to elect their preferred candidate has been dead wrong. These districts, instead of giving African Americans more power, it has started to deprive them of that power, because by packing the minority vote into districts, it's diluting that influence in the adjacent districts. What Republicans are doing by redistricting are that they are using the racial demographic to enact a Republican gerrymander, says Nicholas Stephanopoulos, a professor at the University of Chicago Law School. Because of that outcome of packing minorities into one district is the reduction of Democratic representation in these districts. The reason the prominence of racial gerrymandering has been actualized in the past few years is because of a new case, Bethune-Hill versus Virginia Board of Election, heard by the Supreme Court on June 6, 2016. Mrs. Bethune-Hill sued the Board of Elections constitutionally as she believes that the Board of Elections used race and minority presence as a primary factor in drawing district line for the House of Delegates, which is unconstitutional under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. However, this is not the most recent example of gerrymandering which has resurfaced recently. Pennsylvania legislator redrew the lines of the redistricted map from the Republicans to make it more competitive because they felt the map gave the Republican Party way more of an advantage. This is recently. A report from the Brennan Center for Justice today estimated the effect of gerrymandering on the 2018 midterm elections this year and said the Democrats would have to trounce the Republicans and win the national vote by over 11 points to win the House, to win back the House because of the strong pull of gerrymandering. With Democrat Connor Lamb's victory over Rick Saccone recently in Pennsylvania's 18th district, something President Trump won by 20 points in the 2016 election, Democrats' expectations for November skyrocketed, and voters have expressed their preference for Democrats by an average of 7 points. However, if you factor in the gerrymandered lines of the GOP, those gains are cut in half, according to Mother Jones. The amount of gerrymandering since 2010 has increased drastically. Unlike in past redistricting cycles, the GOP has access to computer modeling and data analysis that allowed them to draw some of the most extreme and resilient gerrymanders in history, also according to Mother Jones. They write, this was particularly true in purple states that should have been responsive to political shifts. In years when Democrats do well, purple states go blue. In good years for Republicans, they turn red. But many of these large purple states have been gerrymandered so that they no longer respond to political changes on the district level. The report points to Michigan, North Carolina, and Ohio in particular as states where gerrymandering could cost Democrats the House. It also looks at Texas, a state that, while reliably Republican, contains suburban districts that should swing between the two parties under normal circumstances. This means that not only can Republicans further secure normally red states with gerrymandering, but they can also turn purple states into red states that do not falter with changes on the district level, so they'll usually go Republican. This might be confusing, but what the map makers would do, that are redistricting lines for either party, is they would pack Democratic or Republican voters, which way you look at it, into normally blue or red districts, while drawing those lines, which compacts Democratic influence in that state because they'll win one or two districts that they'll be packed into, but the Republican influence is outstanding in this Pennsylvania map that was redrew recently, so they'll have to spread out, so the Republican or the Democrat, whichever party is drawing the map, they will be spread out and their influence will be more powerful and they'll win more. So basically what I'm trying to say is gerrymandering is basically a genocide to democracy. What I'm trying to say is that we really need to outlaw gerrymandering in a sense that we need to make it so that parties cannot take advantage of our voters and that they can not win, that they can fairly win on hot button issues that affect our country like education, immigration, just diplomatic issues and stuff that will seriously affect our country. And if we are cheating on this basically, then that's not good for our democracy. That's an autocracy if we have the ability to do that. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you tune in next time where we'll be talking about gun control. Please like and subscribe the video, join the notification squad, and that's basically all I have to say. Thank you for watching.